about the release of Bo Bergdahl. I know we don't leave our soldiers behind, but do you think trading 5 Taliban for 1 U.S. prisoner makes it open season on the U.S. around the world?
This issue came up when I was Secretary of Defense, and at the time, I understand that we were trying to open up broader negotiations with the Taliban, and this was the price of being able to develop the broader negotiations. And I said, wait a minute. We're going to provide 5 of their worst people in exchange for a prisoner. I said, this doesn't make a lot of sense. We ought to go back and try to negotiate with them. I said, in addition, there is no guarantee that these people who are, among the worst in terms of the people we were maintaining at Guantanamo, I said, there's no guarantee that these people are going to be secure and that we're going to make sure that they're not going to engage back in the battle. And I had an obligation as Secretary of Defense to assure the Congress that we would not exchange anybody unless we were damn sure that they were secure and that we kept track of them. So I was opposed to the deal because we had none of those assurances, and as a result of it, it kind of went away. When I saw it come back, I was very concerned about the exchange that took place. Of course we want to get our people back. Of course we want to be able to make sure that no one is left behind. But we also want to make sure that we are not releasing the kind of terrorists who are then going to re-engage in the battle and come back to hit the United States again. I think we've got to take every step to make sure that doesn't happen, and I'm not assured that that is the case with regards to the 5 that we sent to countries there.
There's been a lot written, and it's still being investigated by the Senate Intelligence Committee, about what intelligence we got by using what they call, enhanced interrogation techniques, which is basically torture, waterboarding, and other techniques. Do you think, knowing when you know it all from the CIA, do you think that any of the leads, the courier that led to the bin Laden capture, came from using torture?
Well, look, when I went in as CIA director, and obviously was aware of what are called these enhanced interrogation techniques, use of water torture, these were methods that were not exactly in line with the values of this country. And I think when President Obama took the steps of eliminating those kinds of techniques, I supported it, largely for a couple reasons. Number one, because I thought they did violate our values as a free and democratic society. But more importantly, because people like the FBI director said, we really don't need to do that in order to gain the kind of intelligence that we need. We can do it through using the kind of methods we do with regards to criminals in this country. Having said that, and I'm not one that supports renewing those kinds of techniques, I do think that, it is fair to say that intelligence was gathered from using some of those techniques. And some of that intelligence did become part of the pieces of intelligence that we were able to put together that ultimately helped us identify the couriers and who they were. So there was some value in that intelligence, which isn't to say that we couldn't have gotten that same kind of information using other methods. But it is a fact that, in fact, some of that information proved helpful in terms of going after bin Laden. Let me say this, that I think the president has to always retain, if we face a situation where we think there is an imminent threat to the United States by a terrorist, and we've identified who that terrorist is, I think the president ought to reserve, under his right as commander-in-chief and under his authorities in the Constitution, the right to use what methods are necessary in order to be able to protect this country. So I wouldn't eliminate the president's capability to be able to use that if necessary in order to protect this country. Then with military assistance and with the kind of weapons that would help them confront that. Thirdly, I think we need to resurrect missile defense. You know, we made very clear that we're going to, like the FBI director said, you know, we really don't need to do that in order to gain the kind of intelligence that we need. We can do it through using the kind of methods we do with regards to criminals in this country. Having said that, and I'm not one that supports renewing those kinds of techniques. Series of steps should be taken. One, sanctions. I think, you know, the President and other countries have agreed to sanctions. That's one step. But in addition to that, I really do believe that we ought to be arming the Ukrainians. We ought to give them the military assistance they need in order to be able to confront the Russians. And I realize that the Russians are probably, you know, a much more effective force, but the reality is they need to know that if they're going to continue to do what they're doing, they're going to have to pay a price. So we ought to be helping in a military way, helping them with military assistance and with the kind of weapons that would help them confront that. Thirdly, I think we need to resurrect missile defense. You know, we made very clear that we're going to try to establish missile defense in those countries, but we were in negotiations with Russia, and we said, okay, you know, we'll take it easy in terms of getting these other countries to put missile defense in. Well, since Putin is doing the kind of stuff he's doing, I think we ought to resurrect the issue of missile defense all over again and make very clear to them that if you want to play those kinds of games, then we're going to establish missile defense again. Fourthly, that we need to strengthen NATO to make very clear that NATO is going to play a very important role in preventing Russia from going into some of these other countries. And fifthly, I think we ought to make very clear that we are going to provide additional energy resources to those countries so that Russia cannot just blackmail countries with regards to their energy resources. They are going to have to we're going to have to create some other sources of energy that allow these countries to basically have greater independence from Russia in terms of their energy supplies. It's going to take a long time. It'll take a long time to develop that capability, but I think that ought to be one of the steps we take. So I think all of those steps are the ones we ought to take in order to make very clear to Mr. Putin that he cannot do what he's doing. The only way you deal with the Putins of the world is through strength, not weakness.
We have another questioner asking,